I realize I'm, I think, second to the last speaker before concluding the day. Happy to be here. We're new to the ARF. We're a new member, so looking forward to all the benefits of membership and meeting and talking with some of you further. I was speaking with my 8-year-old last night about a topic, and it made me think about today's presentation. I know that sounds strange given I'm talking to some of the brightest minds in technology and auto manufacturers and research, but we were talking at the dinner table about smartwatches. I have an Apple Watch. My wife has an old Fitbit. Does anyone else here have a Fitbit? Anyone, by chance? A few? Well, the original Fitbit had a sensor to monitor your walking, and you had to upload it, Bluetooth it to your iPhone to actually find out how many steps you had taken. But that's all it told you. It was just the amount of steps. It literally was a counter. So my wife wants to upgrade to an Apple Watch. My 8-year-old naturally was curious, asking why. So we were talking about the evolution and how, counting and just having a number really doesn't tell you much, right? Is 5,000 steps good? Is 10,000? Is 20? So we were having this conversation, and it made me think a little bit about today's presentation as well, because the sports industry has evolved greatly over the last 10, 20 years, particularly I would say in the last 5. And we've moved from counting. We were an industry that relied a lot on ratings, a lot at a guess of how many eyeballs saw a sign in Yankee Stadium, to a whole new world of engagement and click-throughs and impressions and engagement rates. And the data that is now available has forced rights holders to be better about their approach. So what I'm going to do is just kind of walk you through a little bit about our approach at NASCAR, and give you some examples of some of the things that we've been doing to stay pace and to keep up with these changes. Do we have any NASCAR fans here in the room? Anyone? A few? Okay, that's good. Well, if we were in a market like Phoenix or Chicago or Georgia or Florida, you'd see a lot more hands in the room, and that's okay. That's understandable. But we're a big sport. Live sports made up 86 of the top 100 events last year on television, and NASCAR is a big part of that. We have 36 race weekends a year, and on average we'll have 4 million viewers per minute watching our race. Very popular sport in a lot of ways. Again, on television, we were the number 1 or 2 sport 22 weekends of the year. So those are just some data points to give you a sense of how big, how scalable NASCAR is. We're known a lot in the industry for our brand loyal fans, and how our fans really have a connection to the big Fortune 100 and 500 companies that are involved in the sport, as well as a connection to our 3 OEM partners. We have phenomenal partnerships with Ford, Chevrolet, and Toyota, Toyota being the newest of those 3 OEMs in the sport. And they're involved with us for a lot of different reasons. There's a long list here. I would bucket it into kind of 3 categories. First would be awareness, and that comes in different forms, whether it be one of these manufacturers introducing a new model and bringing that also onto the track. There are some that use NASCAR to increase purchase intent and measure that and study that market to market where we're at. And then others like Toyota has had a big Made in America message. It's been a really important part of Toyota's involvement in NASCAR over the last 10 plus years. And they've seen a lot of success in measuring that and getting people to understand how many of their cars are made here in the United States. So awareness is a big factor for them. B2B is also a big part of NASCAR and what we do, whether it be through fleet sales or other B2B efforts. With a big point of difference from NASCAR to the other stick and ball sports in terms of B2B as a function for a lot of sponsorship. And then lastly, showcasing technology. These partners are using NASCAR to, again, reinforce that product relevance and showcase some of the new things they have going on with their respective cars. So in terms of what the data tells us and more reasons why they're involved in the sport, I mentioned awareness. A lot of that also comes through exposure. Monster Energy is our entitlement sponsor. So when you reference our main series, it's called the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series. So naturally, the data shows that Monster Energy receives the most awareness and exposure in our sport. But right after that, in fact, before NASCAR, are the three OEMs. So Ford, Chevy, and Toyota receive a massive amount of exposure, again, largely due in part to our scale on a weekly basis. We have great fan engagement around the OEMs. They play a critical role. A lot of our fans follow our drivers, but they also have a unique connection to their respective OEM that they're driving on the track. And then lastly, our fans typically own multiple cars and trucks, so there's a great deal of relevance for the OEMs in NASCAR. So a little bit about our approach, and I mentioned that our group, Analytics and Insights, is relatively new. A couple of years ago, about 2 years ago at this time, we merged together a lot of different research functions at NASCAR to create a more holistic and integrated group. So there's two different types of data that is studied and tracked in the sport. On one side here is the racing data that has to do a lot with the technology and driver biometrics, lap data, passing. That's all the competition-relevant data that happens on the track. And on the other side is the area that I oversee, which is the marketing data. And we track a lot of different things in the Analytics and Insights group. Skip here. A lot of data that we track on an annual basis. And I'll walk you through a few of the tools that we use to do that. Our strategy is pretty simple. First, we have built a few proprietary tools, which we think really gives us a market advantage in the sports marketplace. And then lastly, or secondly, we also have really world-class partnerships with some of you in the room. And we've taken a very progressive approach with our partnerships to not treat those partners as vendors. We don't call them vendors. We call them partners. And with that comes some different expectations. But we think that's a really important aspect of our relationship with some of these best-in-class partners. So first and foremost is our fan council. And I call this oftentimes our secret weapon when it comes to research. And we have a partnership with a company called Vision Critical. I know they're here in the room today. They're a great partner of ours. And we have, what it boils down to is we have 25,000 fans that are part of this community. They're not compensated. They want to be part of this fan community. And every Sunday night or Monday morning after a race, we will send out a survey to them and talk to them. And we'll ask them questions. What did you think of the race? Did Kyle Busch winning the race make you more interested in Toyota? What do you think of Dale Jr. Retiring? Who will your favorite driver be now? So there are thousands of questions and things that we are talking to this community about. We're lucky that we have a really good completion rate with our fans because, again, they like their voice to be heard. And through this community, they really feel like they have an involvement in things that are happening on the track. Probably the best examples of the use of this fan community are listed here. 8 years ago, we made a pretty significant change to what happens during a caution flag. And just to break this down, when there's a wreck on the track, the yellow flag comes out. All the cars need to remain in their position as they continue to go around the track, and they're slowed down. When we restart the race, we go to green, and for a long, long time, those cars would start single file. So we had an idea, what if we started the race double file and lined up the cars in twos? Weren't sure where that was going to go. We tested it out here on the fan council and got unanimous feedback in terms of the action that would create and some of the drama that would create. So fans were in favor of it, and sure enough, we instituted that change, and it worked really well. So it's a great example of kind of how we're using this fan community to literally change how things happen on the track. We're also able to prove out the importance of having a favorite driver in terms of the amount of consumption that leads to with our fans. And then lastly, on the right, stage racing, we made another significant change last year, in the racing format. We now have what we call stage breaks, and we've broken up the race into 3 stages. I won't get too technical with you today, but we tested out some of those concepts on the fan council prior to make sure that if we were going to make a change to the format of the racing, that it would be a successful change. Good news is for us, we're able to see a massive increase in the favorability of that from pre-announcement to announcement, and then at the end of last season, after a full season of new stage racing, how that worked. I would encourage you, if you don't have a fan community, to really think about this. Again, this has become a secret weapon for us in a lot of ways, a great resource. We're actually using this daily. We have a great partnership with Vision Critical. Happy to talk more about that further if it interests you. Another proprietary tool that we created in 2012 is our NASCAR Fan Media Engagement Center. And I know to some of you in the room, this might not sound all that innovative at the moment, but in 2012, 2013, we were one of the first sports properties to create our own technology around monitoring what's happening, particularly around social, but also other media channels. So the intent here was really to better analyze and manage the social media conversation around the sport of NASCAR, but then also report that data out to different stakeholders in the sport. So whether it be analyzing trending topics, recording different KPIs and measuring that, this has become a really useful tool for us. Most of all, though, I would call it a diffuser. And I don't know how many of you in the room can relate to this, but every now and then someone in our leadership will zing the research group with what they perhaps think is a hot topic or an emerging issue or a concerning issue. One of the things that we are able to do with the Fan Media Engagement Center is either prove very quickly that that is an issue that we need to address as a sport, or in most cases, actually, we're able to prove that it's not an issue, that the amount of chatter on social that executive XYZ is perhaps seeing on his or her phone is really not an issue. And in fact, it might only be 1 or 2% of the overall social conversation. Here's just an example. I know this is a bit of an eye chart, but a recent example of kind of how we use the Fan Media Engagement Center. So what you see here are a couple of different data sets overlaid over one another. First and foremost, our TV viewers through this particular race, and obviously you can see that there's a natural progression to the checkered flag at the end of the race. And what we lay that over against is social conversation and then use of hashtags for that specific race. But what you see here are the green and yellow, and what those represent are green flag racing and then yellow flag racing, meaning that there is a caution or a stage break. So what we're able to do is monitor the activity, and most times there's an increase in social activity during a stage break, which is what we want to see. So we're able to use the Fan Media Engagement Center to kind of see this in a completely new, entirely new way for us. And it's been a great tool for us, again, in particular, diffusing issues that come up. We work with our broadcast partners, Fox and NBC, with regards to some of the data that we track here as well in real time. I mentioned this idea around this conversation with my son around the Fitbit, and we really have, as an industry, been pivoting from this notion around brands liking impressions, but really what they're after, and a lot of you know this, are views and engagement. So the Fan Media Engagement Center has been really a great asset for us and able to monetize, monitor, and track our points of difference at NASCAR to many of the other sports properties. So a big point of difference for us is our ability to lead with regards to branded content as well as engagement around that content. We might not have the volume of social followers that, say, the NFL has, but we definitely lead with regards to engagement. And what it boils down to is putting, let's say, Anheuser-Busch in an NFL tweet is very different than putting Anheuser-Busch in a NASCAR tweet. And the reason that is because of the involvement of sponsors in our sport. Our fans understand and accept the notion of sponsors being involved in our sport, so it allows us to kind of take a little bit more creativity and flexibility with regards to branded content on social. This is just another example of something we track in the Fan Media Engagement Center with our OEM partners. What this here shows, this data is masked for obvious reasons, but as you can see here, the amount of social conversation with regards to the 3 OEMs is almost half of our total conversation of all of our partners at NASCAR. And we have over 40-plus sponsors at NASCAR, the likes of Goodyear, Sunoco, Coke, and Anheuser-Busch. So we're able to prove out that relevance and really help the OEMs guide their strategy around social. I talked a little bit about our partnerships. We work with a company called Remesh, and I wanted to show you an example of something we've been testing out lately. Remesh is a very interesting company. What they specialize in is live polling. So in working with them, we have the ability to literally talk to thousands of fans as they're on their couch watching a race. It's been really interesting to test out this technology. This is just kind of a quick video that kind of shows you how it works. Here's our moderator welcoming people. We'll show creative, so this will be during a race. We'll show creative. We'll ask a question, right? How does this video make you feel? Participants will respond to that question in real time. And then what happens is as the answers are populated, more answers are produced back out to the participants. So they're continually voting for 30 or 60 seconds on the best answer, and they're seeing other answers. And what their artificial intelligence allows them to do is do this very quickly in a real-time environment. So we're able to track a lot of different things with the use of this technology. Some examples that we've used this technology for are better understanding fans' reactions to driver interviews, feedback on the race itself, better understanding TV coverage, and probably one of our more recent uses is around this notion of split-screen advertising. Some of the presenters earlier talked about second screening and keeping people's attention during commercial breaks. We have the same problem. At NASCAR, we don't have, or we didn't have prior to stage racing, set breaks like the NFL or MLB does. So what would happen is the broadcaster would break away from racing and our fans would get mad. They would get upset that we were breaking away from the action. So we have undergone a lot of research to show and prove with our broadcast partners that split-screen advertising works, that by keeping the race on one box on the left and perhaps putting an ad on the right, will keep viewers engaged. And this Remesh testing and technology allowed us to once again prove that through some of the questions and answers that we used. In the sake of time, I'll just kind of speed up on the last example here. We have another partnership with a company, Wasserman, some of you might be familiar with. They have a technology called their Unlock Profiler. And what this allows us to do is take a much deeper look into social media in ways that, as advanced as we feel we are in social, that we just can't get past some areas. And the example I give is Dale Jr., our most popular driver, announced his retirement last year. And the analytics team received a lot of questions. Well, what does this mean? What's the impact going to be? How do we transfer his fandom, the fandom that those fans have towards Dale Jr. to some of our other younger drivers? By using this Unlock Profiler and the technology that Wasserman has, we were able to study a lot more beyond likes and engagements and really understand some of the demographics and some of the fan overlap between Dale Jr.'s fans and some of our rising stars in the sport. So what that does is that really allows us to better understand each driver having a purpose for our content team and better understanding the fans that are following and their attributes behind each driver. So this has been a phenomenal partnership with Wasserman in using this technology. Our content team can't get enough of this. So in summary, that kind of gives you just a brief glimpse of our approach in terms of building some proprietary tools. Like I mentioned, our fan council with Vision Critical, our fan media engagement center, but then also working with some of the best-in-class partners on the planet. And I'd say in closing that these can't live separately. I think one of the things that we learn and see every day is we need both. We need to have our own proprietary tools and access to that, but also we need these third-party partnerships to have a lot of success. Thank you. Okay.
Any questions from the floor?
Hi. Yep.
Adoption. Can you tell us anything about the work that you're doing to make sure all of this great work is adopted throughout the ecosystem?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, that was a big honor for our group last year to be recognized by the ANA, the Genius Award. A lot of that was around our kind of very progressive approach in elevating social and digital data and integrating that. And you can see from one of the examples with our Fan Media Engagement Center, our ability now to kind of integrate that TV, social, and digital data into one visualization like that. That's not easy to do, as many of you know. That's something we've been striving towards. That's probably one example of several I could give. But that was definitely a big moment for us. I think the other part of what we did there was just, as I mentioned before, sports industries relied so much on TV and viewers, and counting those viewers. We've been very outspoken about elevating the need for people to understand digital and social, that it's not, don't evaluate NASCAR or any sports property just on TV viewers. There's a lot more to the story in the digital and social area to help you evaluate and understand what's happening in the sport. And that was a big part of that as well for us. Thank you.
So I've noticed that NASCAR has been, popular in the United States more than like outside of the United States.
Sure.
Outside of the United States, you see people like more like open wheel racing formats like Formula One. But now we see like here in the United States, for example, like Formula E coming up. Yeah. How do you guys perceive that? Do you think it's a serious threat? Like it can turn around the open wheel versus regular racing balance?
Sure. Great question. I think we definitely take the attitude that all racing is good racing, and we all need to be successful, right, around our respective sports. I think we view our competitors to be more of the stick and ball sports, football, baseball, and soccer. And we say that, I think, because of our popularity in America. So I think I think a lot of those sports, open wheel racing, is going to have success as we are. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with F1 in particular, with regards to their relatively new ownership and whether they expand beyond Austin and go into other markets. International has been a big area for us that we're spending a lot of time and resources on to grow our business beyond the United States as well.
One of the biggest problems in professional sports right now is pace of play, especially in baseball.
Yep.
How do you guys, or is there a strategy to kind of target the younger demographic, millennials per se, to make sure that you guys capture them?
Huge problem for all sports. In fact, I was noticing during the NCAA finals the other night and during the Final Four, just the way they took breaks and how quick it was. And you noticed in the NFL how they've changed their breaks, again, away from the action. It's been a big concern for us, too, and we've been making changes to rectify that. I talked about split-screen advertising and our need to have that as much as possible. That's been a big part in retaining viewership, particularly for the younger ages. I would say the other big change we made on purpose was stage racing. And the premise behind stage racing is creating a forced break for people in the stands to be able to take a break and also to talk to each other. Some of these tracks are very noisy. We didn't have that. So imagine sitting at a racetrack for hours, lap after lap, and not being able to talk to your neighbor like you can in other sports. So we created stage racing to enhance the experience at track and give fans a moment to do that, but also to give controlled breaks for our television partners and the viewers who are watching them without feeling that they're missing the action. So those were big steps in large part taken to address kind of some of those millennial viewers. The good news, too, is that the research shows that the adoption of stage racing among our younger viewers and fans is higher than it is around our older viewers. We have research that proves that out, which is great.
Super.
Great.
Great story and great
Thank you,
questions.
Paul.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. I want to thank everyone